Good morning. We're continuing our reflections on one of the capital sins, that called acedia, or apathy. And I want to kind of point out the general approach that I'm taking here, which I lay out in full in my book on Sins of the Spirit, Blessings of the Flesh, Transforming Evil in Soul and Society, where I'm reaching for a new language to talk about evil. And so first I talk about the chakras, because the chakras represent seven points in our bodies and in our psychology and spirituality. There are strong points that are crossroads, each one of them carrying power with them, healthy power. And then I'm proposing that schema from the East, the seven chakras, may correspond to the seven capital sins, because Aquinas, working from the Jewish tradition, calls sin misdirected love. And that's Jewish because the Hebrew word for sin is an archery term for missing a bullseye. So I'm saying, well, maybe these chakras, when they're healthy, represent that bullseye, that energy and strength that's positive in all of us. And being off-centered, then that bullseye, or that missing of the mark, where sin is named perhaps by the seven capital sins. Now, in the West, these sins came from the Desert Fathers, those young people who quit society, in effect, because society was becoming more and more linked to the empire. And by society, I mean, well, society as a whole, but also the Christian version of society, because in the 4th century, there was that marriage between Christianity and empire. So a lot of young people of idealism left the whole scene, went to the desert. We called them the Desert Fathers. They were young people when they left, and there were women too, so it should be fathers and mothers. But one of the points that they made was the taking in an old teaching about seven capital sins that precedes Christianity. In fact, scholars say that these were, if you will, pagan elements, which were the seven cardinal sins. The Babylonians called them the seven evil keepers. The Zoroastrian and Gnostic traditions talk about the seven heavens and the seven evil keepers. Babylonians actually named 8 such evil keepers. But as one scholar has pointed out, the soul journey was based on the sciences of the day. And a late 14th century poem links the seven sins to the 7 planets, demonstrating a cosmic linkage to sin that we have lost for many centuries. So the idea, again, is also found in the Bible, that the pillars of the earth are trembling and broken when injustice reigns. So there's this cosmic dimension to our capacity for evil that is named both in the Western or Christian model and Jewish model, but also among other religions as well. So Evagrius of Pontus was one of these desert fathers. The year 383, he fled to the desert to live a hermit life. And he laid out the first Christian naming of the 7 capital sins. And his theology traveled to Marseille in southern France, to the monk Cassian in the 4th century also, and early 5th century. And then Saint Benedict following Cassian, it brings it up in his rule written in the 6th century. And then in the 6th and early 7th century, Pope Gregory the Great, in his commentary on Job's, the book of Job, brings it up again and develops it. So the idea that there are these 7 basic sins, it doesn't mean they're absolutely the worst, because injustice is not named as one of them, nor is hatred. But they're considered the most dangerous because the word cardinal links to the word for a door hinge. They open the hinge on the doors, and all kinds of other sins come out with them. come flowing into the human heart. Now, this was beautifully put by a friend of mine who was not Christian or Jewish, not biblical, but Buck Gostorf, a Lakota leader, when he said to me one day that fear is the door in the heart that lets evil spirits in. Fear is the door in the heart that lets evil spirits in. So that's exactly what is meant by a capital sin, that these things are kind of foundational. And if we ignore them or open ourselves up to them, invite them in, such as, and fear might be one, although that's not traditionally named as one of them in the 7 capital sins, but it's a very fine example of what's at stake here when we talk about 7 chakras and the 7 capital sins. So this is a bit of grounding for our further discussions and meditations on acedia and what follows when we let acedia into our hearts and minds. And as I put out in today's meditation, there's a sourness that results, a cynicism, therefore, that's found the etymological meaning of the word in Greek. And there's also the issue of not caring, which can also be, I suppose, classified as selfishness. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow.